Now, I will admit, I don't spend much time thinking about Alejandra Caraballo. I don't know her. I don't think about her. I don't follow her on social media. Yet when her name came up in this House hearing because of Representative Nancy Mace, I knew exactly who she was because I knew the level of rhetoric she was throwing out there. I knew the hate that she was putting out there, and I know the violence that she was trying to inspire. This is somebody who views themselves as a good and decent person. As a matter of fact, if you go to her Twitter feed, she's a wise Latina. Her words, not mine. Clinical instructor, Harvard Law, Cyber Law Clinic, Gender and Tech, and she's got an expertise. And she was there with Congress in front of a panel to discuss the connection between white supremacy and LGBTQ hate. I swear to you, this was, according to the panel, her purpose and a claim of some level of expertise. Guys, welcome to the show, presented by Americans for Prosperity. AmericansForProsperity.org. A free speech is what it's all about, and these people are the good people at it. Now, in this conversation about transgender anything, adults can do what they choose. I don't have to understand it. I don't have to get it. And I will admit, I don't understand it and I don't get it. If you tell me, well, then you don't understand gender dysphoria, as explained in DSM-5, the diagnostics and the manual about how the American Psychiatric Association, I forget the name of the actual group, but how they look at these types of mental illnesses and how they're described, right? That's in there. Of course, gender dysphoria is real. Do I think it's real to the level that we're seeing it in children and adults today? I do not. I believe that the conversation of social contagion is a very, very important one, especially when we talk about kids and how kids want to feel cool. They want to feel important. They want to feel special. And they're told that if they do these things, they're cool, important, and they're special. So that's why we see more of them. The levels to which we see these things do not comport with the statistics about society. This is, in my view, social contagion. The other difference between adults and kids is that kids can't determine their own gender. Kids can't allow themselves to have surgeries. And anybody willing to perform surgeries on children, I think, is an abuser. You're going to take a perfectly healthy child and tell them their body isn't okay. A 14-year-old, to me, that's abuse. I have said so on my radio shows. I say so here. I'm never going to not say so because it's absolutely, positively abusive. It is what it is, what it is. Not changing on that. That's what brings this story to light, and what it is that Representative Nancy Mace said that was so important. Now, if you'll remember Representative Mace, people hated her just a couple months ago, and Trump was trying to get her out of office a couple months ago. This is why you never really just go with any level of trend. You got to actually ask yourself whether or not these people do a good job. If you disagree with them on one thing, doesn't mean you disagree with them on all things. And if you agree with them on one thing, doesn't mean that you agree with them on all things. That's not how it works. Sometimes people surprise you. Sometimes people can do great work, and you should respect it when it's being done. Representative Mace is there for this committee hearing. And in this committee hearing is this woman in question, Alejandra Caraballo. 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 That's how I believe it is pronounced. And she starts by asking, Representative Mace starts by asking a rather good question.
Another question I have, do you believe that rhetoric targeting officials with violence for carrying out their constitutional duties is a threat to democracy, Mr. Ward? Mr. Siegel?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Now, Alejandra Caraballo was the one second from the left, black jacket, white shirt. You'll be seeing more of her in just a second. And the question from Representative Mace was the setup. Do you think that threats to public officials are an attack on democracy? Well, all we heard about in this election was everything's an attack on democracy. Your existence is an attack on democracy. Disagreeing with people is an attack on democracy. Everything's an attack on democracy. Of course, that's not true, but leave that to the side for now, because what comes next is extremely important. That you heard Alejandra Caraballo say, yes, these threats are indeed, that we see online, a threat to society. it gets a little more intense.
Another question I have, do you believe that rhetoric targeting officials with violence for carrying out their constitutional duties is a threat to democracy, Mr. Ward? Mr. Siegel?
Yes.
I played that one already. Let me do the follow-up.
Only a few weeks after the attempted attack on a Supreme Court justice on June 25th, one of the witnesses, Alejandra Caraballo, tweeted out the following in response to a decision on abortion overturning Roe v. Wade, and I'll quote directly from the tweet: "The 6 justices who overturned Roe should never know peace again. It is our civic duty to accost them every time they're in public. They are pariahs. Since women don't have their rights, these justices should never have a peaceful moment in public again." I know something about being accosted. The night of January 5th, I was physically accosted on the streets of D.C. in Navy Yard by a constituent of mine.
Now, she goes on to tell a story about being accosted, how she carries a gun, she can't afford her own personal security. Everywhere in her district, she's carrying a firearm. Well, everywhere in my district, I'm also carrying a firearm. I think that as an American, you have the opportunity to protect and defend yourself and the ones that you love. I think you should take advantage of it. That's a personal opinion. But there was that tweet from Alejandra Caraballo. Now, we know that they stated over at Twitter that Trump had to be removed from the platform because he was inciting violence. But we also know, thanks to Elon Musk's purchase, it took $44 billion to get to the damn truth here, that no one in the Twitter safety department thought that Trump's tweet about American patriots rose to the level of pushing for violence. It took their head of trust and security, Ms. Gade, G-A-D-D-E, to decide that the term American patriots was actually coded violence. And that's what they utilized to keep Trump off of the platform, to take him off the platform. The Ayatollah Khomeini, he remains with tweets talking about eradicating Israel and wiping Israel off the map. That tweet remains, the Ayatollah remains, but Trump didn't remain. If you want to know exactly how ugly the politics of these people really and truly is, Caraballo's tweet still remains. Now, from here, after Representative Mace tells the story about her own personal security issues, she goes into a second tweet.
Alejandra Caraballo also recently tweeted on November 19th, not even a month ago, that the Supreme Court, vested with the judicial power of the United States by our Constitution, stated they are not a legitimate court issuing decisions. And also the Supreme Court is an organ of the far right. So my last question today of Ms. Caraballo: do you stand by these comments, this kind of rhetoric on social media? And do you believe it's a threat to democracy?
Now, people don't like to talk about the fact that there was a threat against the life of Brett Kavanaugh. That man's life was threatened. Someone came to D.C. to kill him, thought he was doing good for the movement. That's what happened. This got brushed under the rug. They're screaming and yelling about violence 24/7, 365. The political right's a threat to democracy. A man came to kill him. How about going back to the softball game? A man tried to kill all Republicans. Steve Scalise, Representative Scalise, is lucky to be alive today. If it wasn't for his leadership position in the House, there would have been no Capitol Police officers there. And that means there would have been a lot of dead Republicans on that softball field, because the guy, a Bernie bro, decided he was going to take matters into his own hands. Violence, violence, violence. If you ask me if there's a time and place for violence, the answer is, well, yeah, of course. War is a time and place for violence. Protecting yourself or your family is a time and place for violence. There is a time and place where you're going to have to engage in the violent activity. That's true. That's real. Let's grow up, if you don't mind. But let's not pretend that putting out these tweets makes sense. A Supreme Court justice disagrees with you, so they should never get a moment of rest. Justice Alito and others should be pariahs. Someone should go and try and kill a Supreme Court justice. This was the activist, the one who's good and decent and kind and loving, who wants to tell you how the white supremacists are connected to the anti-LGBTQ hate, as if somehow LGBTQ isn't anything more than a political movement anyway. They've totally taken the people out of it and have wholly made it a political movement. She wrote this, and Nancy Mace exposes it, and then asks the question:
Thank you, Representative, for the opportunity to clarify and provide.
The question, I should have said, is can you explain these tweets?
Thank you, Representative, for the opportunity to clarify and provide context to my tweets.
I have a question. Is it yes or no? Do you believe your rhetoric is a threat to democracy when you're calling to accost a branch of government, the Supreme Court?
I don't believe that's a correct characterization
What
of
you
my
tweeted,
statements.
though. Did you not tweet that? That you thought that the Supreme Court justices should be accosted?
What I'm
you
saying
tweet
is
that,
that
yes or
that is
no?
not an
Did you tweet
accurate characterization of my statements.
How is it not an accurate characterization? Of course it is. You called for violence. You said they should be accosted. You said they should never get a moment's rest. It's a perfect characterization of your comments because it is exactly what your comments said. And Alejandra Caraballo got caught in the lie. And Nancy Mace, she should have gone harder. I mean, I love what she did here. I absolutely love it. But she should have gone harder.
I don't believe that's a correct characterization
What
of
you
my
tweeted,
statements.
though. Did you not tweet that? That you thought that the Supreme Court justices should be accosted?
What I'm
you
saying
tweet
is
that,
that
yes or
that is
no?
not an
Did you tweet
accurate characterization of my statements.
On June 8th of this year, a man was arrested near Justice Brett Kavanaugh's home in Maryland. He told law enforcement officers he wanted to kill a Supreme Court justice. He was found with a knife, with a pistol, 2 magazines, ammunition, pepper spray, zip ties, a hammer, crowbar, and duct tape. The threats that members of Congress, the threats that branches of government face on the left and the right, as was mentioned by the chairman earlier in the committee hearing, what happened to the speaker's husband is every member's worst nightmare. So it's clear to me that we have to call out the threats to our democracy emanating from wherever they come, whether it's the
We do have to call out the threats. I agree with you, Representative Mace, but you threw in what happened with Paul Pelosi, the husband of Speaker Nancy Pelosi, and there's still question marks on that story based on the original reporting and those reporters who somehow have disappeared from NBC. You had this woman on the ropes, and it was your job, Representative Mace, to finish the conversation. Why should she not have to explain the violence that she was calling for? Why is she still allowed on social media platforms? And when someone is calling for violence, why are they somehow allowed to be part of a panel in front of Congress? Why do they get that honor? That's what you should have been asking. That's how you should have finished the story. And I'm only upset that you didn't finish the task at hand by delivering that blow of exposing what the left was doing by allowing someone like her who has called for this violence to be seen as some level of expert. By the way, in those early videos, you see Congressman Jamie Raskin kind of trying to hide because he knows this is brutal. And it absolutely was, and it was rightfully deserved. The political left has shown themselves not to police themselves. You see the call for violence and nothing happened to her. You see how they twisted what Donald Trump said to fit one of their policies so they could take him off Twitter while leaving other world leaders on who have called for the extinction of Jews. Hey, that's me, by the way. Nancy Mace did a great job here. And she deserves credit, but she should have finished the job. She should have finished the job. So next time you see Alejandra Caraballo, pay her no mind, or really respond with, she called for violence. She called for Supreme Court justices to be attacked. She should be ashamed of herself. She doesn't get to stand on the idea that she's good and decent. Now, she apologizes for what she did. Well, I guess anybody can be, have a comeback. It's America. We do love our comeback stories. But I'm not going to sit here and accept her as somebody who is an arbiter of the decent. It's going to take her a while to get back to being somebody who can make that claim if she was ever somebody who could make that claim before. But Nancy Mace proved that she can't. And we should hold her to that. Republicans should hold her to that. My light went out. I guess that means the video's done. I guess it worked out for the timing. I'm pretty dang well, because now I just look scary. Is that better? Is that better? How's that? That'll work. All right. Right there. That's what happens when I do the show in a cigar lounge. Sometimes your light goes out. Guys, I am so Happy that you were here, and I am thrilled with Americans for Prosperity, AmericansForProsperity.org, because they're the ones who let me do this show. Economic liberty, free speech, gotta love it. AmericansForProsperity.org, and I appreciate you, man. I gotta set up a studio space here. That's what's gotta happen. I need a full-on studio space here. I gotta go make that happen. I will catch you guys tomorrow, right there, and appreciate it. You take care.